We're going to move kind of quickly today because I am mindful that the weather is accumulating and I don't want to keep everybody here too long in the midst of that, but long enough to experience God's presence. The good news for you today is my sermon is not going to be as long as I originally planned because our brother here already spoke part of it, which is amazing. We're going to be talking about what it means to be holy, what it means to be set apart. We'll be in the book of Leviticus, chapter 11. And I just want to ask a question. I want you to be honest, okay? I promise there's no judgment, no condemnation from my end. How many of you would say, I really, really love the book of Leviticus? Got laughter there. Okay, let's just be honest. How many of you would say, when I get to Leviticus, I either kind of like skip it or I'm just like, oh, I got to read this one. Let's just be honest for a minute. Okay, good. Thank you for your honesty. I really appreciate that. Yeah. I remember when I first started reading the Word, I was probably 10, maybe 9 years old. And I had somebody challenge at our Christian school. I had somebody come along and they challenged us, we got to read the Bible. I'm like, yeah, you know what? I believe in God. I probably should read the Bible. It's a good idea. So I'm at 9, 10 years old. I started in Genesis. And I'm getting through it. I'm enjoying it. I'm learning a lot. Get through Exodus. Like, okay, this is cool. Then it gets to the end of it. It's kind of some kind of stuff that's hard to understand. But, hey, I'm reading the Bible. I'm doing the right thing. Then I got to Leviticus. And I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I got into it, and I was just like, what? This is not really making sense to me. This is a hard-to-understand book. And I do what I don't have the stats in front of me, but what a lot of people do, not only in their reading of the Bible, but with their Christian walk in general. I put it down. I didn't go back to it for a while. Because getting to a place where I didn't understand caused me to walk away from it. And thankfully, God led me back to the Word, and I got to the New Testament, started there, understood it, then came back and read it again, still didn't quite understand it. But over the years, what I've learned something is this, is that when God puts something in His Word, it's not by accident. And if there's something in God's Word that we don't understand, it's not on God to take that out of there. You with me? And so my goal as not just a pastor, but just as a child of God, if my Heavenly Father is showing me something and I don't understand it, guess what that means I got to do? I got to figure out what exactly it is that He's trying to say. So we're going to go through like one key passage of Leviticus. And I believe that there's a few points in this book that kind of tie it together that shows us what exactly it is that He's trying to say. So before we get to the main passage, though, I've got a list of scriptures. We're just going to speed read these, okay? So go ahead and all right, here's a list. I only put 7 of them on this list, but there's something that happens in these 7 scripture verses we're going to speed read. And this is a phrase that actually happens over 40 times in the book of Leviticus, okay? So we're going to speed read these, and here's the challenge. I want you to see if you can figure out something that happens on all of them, okay? So like a theme that you see in all these verses, all right? Guys in the back, you ready? We're going to go through this kind of quickly, okay? Ready? Go. Speak to the people of Israel, say to them, I am the Lord your God. Okay, next one. Follow the rules, keep my statutes. I am the Lord your God. Keep going. You should therefore keep my rules. I am the Lord. Okay, next one. That one, okay? Just read the bottom. What does it say there? Okay, next one. Keep going. Don't turn to idols. Yep. I am the Lord your... All right, next one. Don't do that stuff because... All right. I think there's one more. And do that stuff because... All right. Hey, good job in the back. Let's give them a hand. Guys in the back, guys and ladies too. I know some ladies do that too. You guys are awesome. You make this thing happen every week. So, this is just 7 of over 40 examples of where this thing is quoted. What was the theme that you picked up on just now? Okay, so question, in your own family, do you often have to tell your family members who you are a lot? I do, actually, because I just happen to have 2 toddlers, and This is probably bad parenting, but I have to be like, no, I'm the dad. I'm the one in charge. If anybody here is better at parenting young children, please come talk to me because I could use a little help. But like, why did God have to say it so many times? Did they kind of like, did the generation that walked through the Red Sea, saw the sea part, and they walked through it on dry ground, did they like forget who he was? Well, actually, yeah, they did. And like, can you imagine seeing such a great, tremendous miracle of God and then acting as if that didn't happen? Like, what a bunch of, I'm reading this and I'm thinking like, what a bunch of idiots. And then I think about my own life and I'm like, oh, actually, how many times have I seen God do something amazing? And then I kind of turn back to the habits that I had before. And so, but what he's doing right here, he's not just reminding them like, hey, just in case you forgot, I'm God, okay? What he's doing is he's revealing something important about his nature. Because here's what's happening. You read through the Leviticus, and you come up to all these rules and regulations, and you're kind of like, why is that there? I don't really get that. But it's easy to get bogged down in the details, why they can't eat this kind of food, whether or not they should have this kind of tattoo, or whether they can do this or do that. But people who get bogged down on the details miss the whole point. What God's trying to say is all that stuff, all the details, all the rules, is because of this. I am the Lord. In other words, every rule they had, every practice they participated in came back to the nature of who God is. Everything they do was connected in some way to the nature of God. And so here's our goal today, is that everything we do will reflect the nature of who God is. I want you to think about that for a minute. 1 Corinthians 10:31 says this, and whatever you eat or drink, whatever you do, do all to the what? So in other words, our challenge as people of God, whatever we're doing, our challenge is to allow that to reflect the nature of God. And that was the point of Leviticus. You see, we read it today, and every aspect of every rule that's in Leviticus, even if it doesn't make sense to us in 21st century Ohio, I guarantee you this. A Hebrew person from about 4,000 years ago would have heard that rule and said, okay, either yeah, that makes perfect sense, or I know there's a reason why that is. But really what it was is it was connecting them to the nature of who God is. This is who I am, and if you're going to be my people, I want you to reflect who I am. It's a very simple question I want to ask us. Does everything we do reflect the nature of who God is? Take a moment and think about this. And I'm not going to get involved in like, you should do this and not do that, or you can watch this movie or not eat that stuff. I'm not really interested in the rules themselves. What I am interested, though, is even the stuff we're watching, the things we're doing in our free time, the places we're going, the people we're talking to, is everything we're doing reflecting the nature of who God is? As his people, is his nature being reflected through us everywhere we go, every conversation we have? What I want to share today, we've sung this word holy, and the word holy appears more often in Leviticus than any other book of the Bible. And so kind of like when he repeats, I am the Lord, when God repeats something in the Bible, guess what that means? Yeah, probably important, right? Like if you ever had to repeat yourself to your kids, hopefully your kids got the memo that like, hey, mom's kind of serious, dad's kind of serious about this particular thing that they keep repeating. If God repeats something in the Bible, it's probably something we should pay attention to. So this word holy that appears very often in the book of Leviticus is not just an ancient word that's outdated because, hey, we're still singing songs about it now, right? So it's still a word that we use today. But what does it mean? So the word holy, if you translate it and kind of understand what it means today, the word that we heard just a little bit ago, it actually captures it very well. The word holy in the Old Testament means set apart or different, but in a supernatural kind of way. Being set apart, being different. And so I want you to think about what's not just what the word itself means, but who they were talking to and what was happening. We just said a minute ago, they had just been led out of the slavery in Egypt, led through the Red Sea, right? And then right after that, what does God do? He brings them to the wilderness, and he says, okay, you're going to be my people. And here is the covenant that I'm going to make with you. I'm going to be your God. You're going to be my people. Okay? So follow it with me. He saves them. He calls them his own. And then what happens next? Now he's at the point of the relationship where he's starting to articulate to them, if you are going to be my people, here's how I want you to live. But it's not about the rules. It's not about the legalistic aspect of it. It's about being different from the people around you. It's about recognizing me for who I truly am. God is holy. He was to be seen as separate, different, not on the same level as the other gods that other nations had at the time, and definitely not on the same level as humanity. He was separate, set apart, and he expected his people to respect him in that way. They had just seen the mighty miracle that led to their deliverance from slavery. A quick note about the other religions at the time. Here's how that plays out when you talk about God's holiness and God's separateness. 3 things I want to share about the other religions that the people had all around Israel that was not true of God. They were looking to make a God in their own image. They wanted a God that they could see. They wanted a God that they could understand. And they wanted a God that they could control. You can't do any of those things with God. You can't see him. I can't understand him all the time. And I definitely can't control him. You know, back in that day, what was the format that most people used for their worship? Idols. They wanted to carve something that they could see so that when they went to their worship time, like, oh, this is who I'm looking at. Okay, I'm going to look at this idol and I'm going to bow down to this because, they wanted to be able to see who they're worshiping. But what's God telling his people? No, I'm not like that. You're not going to see me. In fact, don't try to make a little calf or a little image that you think represents who I am, because you cannot make something that fully captures who I am. I'm not going to be like the other gods that you worship. He's not like that which we can see. Now, we don't have idols today, right? Yeah. What does my generation do when we want to learn something? Like, hey, Google, can you tell me the truth about my life and everything? We also people naturally want a God that they can understand. And that's what a lot of people did back then. Is like they had all this idea of who their God was, and they made the rules, and they created him in their own image based on what they wanted. A God that they can understand. And God's like, I'm going to reveal myself to you, but there's going to be some things about me that just you cannot fully comprehend or grasp. And I could just tell you this. No matter how much we understand God, we have to always approach him from a place that there's something about him that we're not going to understand. And this is especially true when he does things or when he allows things that you're thinking like, why did he allow that? We don't get the privilege of fully 100% understanding our God. And he cannot be controlled. Back then, all the other religions, you know what they had? They had the sun god, and the rain god and all these other different gods. And guess what? If you wanted the sun to shine on your crops, guess what you did? You made a sacrifice to the sun god. It hasn't rained in a while. Guess what you're going to do? You're going to make a sacrifice to the God that makes it rain. That's where like the Baals and all the local Canaanite divinities come in. That's why they were so attracted to that, because that was their perception of how stuff would happen. We need our crops to grow, so we need to make a sacrifice to the God that makes our crops grow. But what is God saying by saying, I'm holy, be like me? What he's saying is this: I'm not like the gods that you think you can control. You can't just enter this relationship and say, if I do this, God, you have to do that for me. I'm not the kind of God where it says, God, I put 10% in the offering plate. You have to answer all my prayers now. It doesn't work that way. And for those of you who read the Chronicles of Narnia, you know this. There's this moment where the lion, who represents Christ, where the humans are entering this world, and they're asking the question about this lion, and they're like, this lion, this sounds kind of dangerous, but you're talking about him like you love him. Is this lion safe? And the local, I forget who it was, I think it was Tumnus, he's like, safe? No, the lion is not safe, but he's good. I thought that's a great picture of our God. He's not someone that we can control, that we can put in a box, that we can try to arrange in our own image of who we think he should be. But he is good. And that's what is holiness. And God's people are to recognize him for who he truly is. We need to learn to recognize him for who he truly is. He can't be seen, he can't be understood, he can't be controlled. Real quick, I want to read Hebrews 12, 25 through 29. Actually, go ahead and skip through. Read this on your own sometime. I'm going to skip to verse 29. Go ahead and fast forward to that part. Verse 29, go ahead. There you go. Read it with me, if you don't mind. For our God is our God is described as a consuming fire. What does that mean? We're not worshiping something that we can control, that we can dictate the terms of engagement. Something that if we do the right things and say the right things, he has to bless us because he follows our pattern of how things should go. We're entering the presence of a consuming fire. And last thing I want to share is this. God wants his people to be a reflection of his holiness. We can't be, just like God was saying, like, hey, you can't be like those other nations. All those rules that he gave them is actually for their own good. If you actually look at, especially like the dietary laws, like, for example, one of the things was you're not allowed to eat pork. They didn't know about this back then, but if you don't cook pork all the way, there's some parasites that you can get. And so, like, they didn't have the science to prove that. So God was like, you know what? Just don't eat it, okay? You go through every single rule that they had at that time based on their standards of cleanliness and their understanding of science. It actually makes sense. So those rules were meant to protect them and also to be a reflection of them being different from the nations around them. And that's what God is calling his people to be different from the people around them. This is a theme you see in multiple verses, Old Testament, New Testament. We have to be different. We have to embody some spiritual light that is not present in the people that don't know the Lord. There's enough darkness. There's enough chaos. There's enough hostility. There's enough division in this world. You know what this world needs? The reflection of God's holiness. Being holy means the divine presence that's not like something that you can experience in human, physical things. Something that only God can give you, something that sets you apart from the common and from the everyday stuff. That's who he calls us to be. Matthew 5, what is Jesus telling his disciples? You guys are going to be the salt that brings freshness to a decaying world. You guys are going to be the light divinely that brings light to a dark world. That's who I need you to be. And so for us to when we talk, again, going back to the Leviticus, it was never about every single rule, because in the New Testament, Paul makes it clear, like, you're not going to, none of us really actually 100% can follow all those rules. But all this whole time, the spirit of those rules was meant to separate us from those around us. And that, my friends, was the whole point of Leviticus. God's holy. He's the Lord. He's different from anything, any other God, anything else we see in this world. He wants us to be his people. We have the privilege of being his people. And as his people, he gives us a divine reflection of him that this world needs, with the goal that everybody in our circles comes into contact with that divine and finds a way back to him so that they too can glorify the Father in heaven. I want to invite Rod and Brandy back up. We're going to just take a few minutes and just let this hit home. Some of you, when we talk about living differently, being set apart, some of you very recently have seen this happen. You can point to a time where this is who I was and this is who I am now. This is better. You have become set apart. You have entered this relationship, and you are now a reflection of the divine. For some of us, actually, I think for all of us, when we sing these words about God being holy, I want us to understand that his holiness, his being set apart, his being different, is something he calls us all to participate in, to understand him for who he is, to see him for who he truly is. So I want us to stand together. And I don't have a specific altar call, but here's what I want to open it up for. As we sing this last song together, I want to open up this altar for anybody. And it doesn't matter, you could be like a leader, or maybe you just walked in, maybe you're new in your relationship to Christ. But I want to encourage all of us to participate in this. And this is the call for the altar as we worship. If you need more of God's holiness in your life, that's it. That's the altar call. If that's what you need, I want you to come up here and I want you to sing this song from the altar. If you need more of God's holiness in your life, come on up here. Let's worship him for who he truly is today. More of you, less of me. God, that everywhere we go, we have these moments in your presence where we can truly, genuinely sense that you're close to us. And God, we're aware that your presence goes with us into our homes, to our schools, to our places of work. God, my prayer is that every single one of us can learn to see you for who you truly are. That as we turn our attention towards you, that you would reveal yourself to us, God, because we know that's in your heart. And God, just as we just sang a minute ago, burn away anything that's not of you. We know that's a dangerous prayer, but we give you permission, God. We surrender today to what? To your goodness, your perfect will. Have your way among your people, God.